What is up, everybody? Welcome into Shout, a Buffalo football podcast. Saturday, January 12th, the Bills have been eliminated. 33-30, an overtime loss to the Denver Broncos, an extremely emotional, heavy locker room, as I'm sure it's an emotional and a heavy fan base right now, as these tend to be over the years. I feel like, Ryan, we're experienced at these shows, right?
Yeah.
Like the shows where the season ends after this great hope of what could possibly be. And I don't know if you would put any season in the past ahead of this one in terms of what it felt like was ahead of the Bills over the next couple of weeks with a chance to go on a Super Bowl run. It ends in a just unbelievable way here in Denver at Empower Field. 5 total turnovers for the Buffalo Bills in this game, and they still had a chance to win it. We're going to get into all of the different things that happened in this game that led us to the final result. How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Yeah, listen, there's a wide variety of reasons why the Bills ended up losing this game, and we're going to get into all of them tonight. But, for me, Matt, it starts with the turnovers. That is not a winning recipe when you lose the turnover battle by 4. When you fumble a ball right before halftime, that ends up costing you 3 points, which is the difference in this game. So there's a lot to unpack here, but Buffalo was their own worst enemy. They really could have pulled away with this game had they protected the football better in the first 4 quarters.
To me, the thing with Josh Allen that really stood out, and you want to start with the emotions. I mean, he really had to gather himself in the hallway before he even got to the podium to be able to kind of collect himself enough to get there to answer the questions. It hit him really hard. And I think a big reason why is because this might be the biggest reason, him being the biggest reason why the Bills lost in a playoff game of his career. Maybe going back to the Houston Texans game back in 2019 when things got a little bit crazy. But for me, I thought that he had taken the week in week 18 to reset, went in and played such a poised game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this one, it was almost like all of that was out the window. Just sloppy plays. Like, listen, the fumble where he was hit from behind, you can't really put that one on him. He lofted the one interception that you'd like him to make a better throw there. But the fumble at the end of the second quarter, to me, was the one that you're going to go back all season long and just be pulling your hair out thinking about that moment because you handed the Denver Broncos a free 3 points.
Yeah, it was a, let's just start with the fact that it was a questionable decision by Sean McDermott, Joe Brady, and the coaching staff. No timeouts, very limited time, and I get it. It was supposed to be take a shot if it's there, throw it away. But in the moment, Allen tried to take off and run with it. I don't know what he thought was going to happen after taking off with the ball with no timeouts. Just slide, get down, go into halftime, and kind of go from there. Instead, he tries to do too much. He gets hit on the wrist. The ball comes out. I can't remember if it was McGovern or Edwards that landed on the ball initially, pops out there. Denver recovers it with about 2 or 3 seconds left, and they're easily in field goal range. So, the decision-making process to get aggressive there with no timeouts is baffling. But then it's just Josh Allen needing to know better in that moment. Okay, my read's not there. There's no deep shot to be had. Throw it out of bounds. Live for another day.
Yeah, and the points about, you look at the final numbers, and it's 5 total turnovers. The James Cook fumble in the first quarter was a killer because you're driving. They don't even look like they're ready to stop you. And what I talked about on the preview show, Ryan, kind of played out. It looked like the Denver Broncos kind of came out, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and lackadaisical. And that turnover kind of woke them up a little bit, got them back in the game. They then go down and drive. They score a touchdown. They take the lead. And that's when it felt like, the Bills were just playing from behind all the way to the fourth quarter till they went ahead 24-23 late. But the thing about it is crazy. You look at the final numbers. Josh Allen turns the ball over 4 times, but they still put up 30 points on the road. The problem is a lot of those turnovers gave, advantageous situations for the Denver Broncos offense. You go back and look through this game. I don't think the Broncos offense was absolutely outstanding. I thought the Bills did a pretty good job on their running game. It was just third down was an issue, as it has been all year. And that's been an issue for the Broncos offense. And they were able to kind of convert in a lot of big time situations. there was one defensive play I want to get to in a second. Before I get there, David Trelizio said, did Josh Allen decide to run with the ball on that with 16 seconds left, or did the coaches tell him to try and move it to go for 3? And Sean McDermott owned that. He said, we wanted to be aggressive in that spot. And I think that was the wrong call. But what my point at the beginning of the show on Allen is like, you have to take ownership as the league MVP in year 8 of those moments in the game of protecting the football. Haven't we had these press conferences like ad nauseum this year where he steps to the podium and talks about, I have to take better care of the football? Like, the turnovers have been up this year. And, he worked through a lot of those things over the course of the season. And then you go on the road in the first round, you don't turn over at all. And it just turns into an absolute mess in week 2 against Denver.
Yeah, and to answer David's question, no, Sean McDermott and the Bills said the play call was take a shot if it's there, if not, throw it away. So that is 100% on Josh Allen taking off with the ball, making that decision, costing the Bills 3 points there. There were 13 points between the end of the first half and the second half. Actually, before that, obviously, James Cook's fumble as well. But 13 points the Bills give up on turnovers. James Cook, and that was at least a 10-point swing because the Bills were in field goal range, potentially going to go up 14-3 there. He fumbles. Denver drives down, scores a touchdown. Allen's fumble before halftime, 3 points there. The strip sack right at the start of the third quarter where Shakir's chip did not work on the play. It allowed the defender to get around Deion Dawkins. That led to another field goal. So that's just 13 points there. If the Bills had done a better job of protecting the football, this game doesn't go to overtime. They win in regulation, and they probably, I don't want to say cruise to a victory, but they probably win comfortably. But instead, they had to play from behind. They got back into it. They had a lead late. And then after Denver took the lead again, which we'll get into there too, with depth finally costing Buffalo 2 scores in this game, Allen missed 2 big-time throws, especially one to Dawson Knox that could have ended it in regulation. So a lot of reasons why we're sitting here talking about the end of the season rather than the Bills moving on to the AFC Championship game.
Whiskey over on YouTube, we got to give him a little credit.
Yeah,
coming in with the sick super chat and the sick transition that would have been when you brought up wide variety, and he said, speaking of wide variety, Ryan, head to Tops and explore the wide variety of your favorites for Super Bowl weekend. And obviously, bummer that the Bills won't be there. Listen, people are going to have their takes here, right? And we're going to get through all of it over the next couple of weeks. We'll go through all of the blame that gets spread around for this Bills team and why they've landed at the place that they've landed. We'll get into all of that. But I thought there was, if you're a Sean McDermott you want a different head coach. The one moment in this game that and I'm not coming out of this even putting him in the top 3 of the reasons the Bills lost this game. I know you probably like the defense to hold up a little bit more early on, but I thought the way they came out in the second half is what the Bills do. They got back into the game and there were, I know they were trying to save their timeouts, but Tre'Davious White goes down for a play. Dane Jackson killed, and I know I own it. It was a cool moment for Dane Jackson.
There,
to get an opportunity in the playoff.
Just an FYI. So I'm gonna jump in
Can you
there.
Hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit. Yep, you're better now, but that was getting a little bit choppy on my end for you. So while you're maybe looking at that, yeah. Depth finally caught up with the Bills in this game. They go in without Jordan Poyer. Cam Lewis comes in. He's unbelievable early in the game. 2 pass breakups on Cortland Sutton passes to Cortland Sutton. He goes down with cramping late in the first half. And what does Denver do? As soon as he's out of action, they attack Darnell Savage, who comes in his place. And, Savage has a ton of reps under his belt. He's played in this league quite a few years, but he overplayed the ball. That led to an easy touchdown right before halftime. You're looking then at Trey White. Trey White gets taken out on a block on a Bo Nix scramble, and he's out of the game for a play. They bring in Dane Jackson. What does Denver do? They attack Dane Jackson, 1 play, touchdown. So Sean Payton was very aware of the situation. When Bills players went down with injuries and they were on their, back up at cornerback and at even further down the depth chart at safety, and they hit on those plays. That's another reason why the Bills are going home and not advancing. One of many, but it's unfortunate the depth or lack thereof eventually caught up with them.
You got me now? Am I coming through
Yes.
okay?
Yep.
Okay. You kind of covered a lot of it there, but the thing in that moment situationally to throw Dane Jackson out on the field and then leave him on an island one-on-one with Marvin Mims, that's an absolute mismatch. And I think if you take a time out there, knowing you're throwing Dane Jackson out there, and lets you get things situated, everybody on the same page, knowing you put Dane Jackson in a spot like that, cold off the bench late in the game in the fourth quarter, going out one-on-one with Marvin Mims, it's not going to end well. And so that to me was the moment where, obviously the Denver Broncos were methodically driving the ball down the field on that last drive. They felt confident in being able to score a touchdown, and obviously they ended up getting it. And then you get the ball back to Josh Allen, you get to overtime. You had everything that you needed. You had everything you wanted. In overtime, you get a stop. Your defense makes a stand. You get the ball back. Josh Allen has a chance to go and drive down the field and win the game. And what ended up transpiring there to me is what is going to be remembered the most from this game. And listen, I'm the last person that likes to, go do a post-game podcast after the Bills turn the ball over 5 times on the road and talk about the officials, but it's got to be discussed, Ryan. This is one of the most puzzling overtime moments in recent playoff history as Brandon Cooks goes for a bomb catch, brings the ball down, and as he comes to the ground, actually Deion Dawkins, if you go to his Instagram account, he posted a screen grab of Cooks down on the field with the defender on him, basically meaning that he would be down by contact in that moment. The defender rolls through the play, rips the ball out of Cooks' hand. Everybody you talked to after the game thought that it was a catch, including Brandon Cooks, including Sean McDermott, who went on a 3-minute rant and basically emotionally said, I need to stand up for Buffalo because it is absolutely unacceptable how that process played out. And that is a huge play in the game, Ryan. If the Bills get a completed pass there, they're kicking a field goal a couple plays later to win the game. How the game wasn't slowed down to even try to figure out a way into the decision-making process and whether or not that was a catch or not. It feels like we've wasted minutes in games this season trying to figure out calls, and to want to just rush through that. I have to agree with Sean McDermott in that moment.
It was brutal. I mean, go back 1 week ago before halftime with the field goal attempt for Jacksonville and how long that discussion took place on the field. Everything on that play screamed reception for the Bills. One, he comes down with the ball initially. You see the knee hit. You see him land on the ground with the defender. It's not until they both roll over after the play, or the defender rolls over Cooks, that he comes up with the ball. By rule, cold completion, whatever you want to call it, it goes to the offense. And for them to rule it an interception on the field and then not really take the time to have a thorough review, that's awful. And there's more and more people on social media, bashing the NFL, bashing the officiating for the pass interference penalties late in the game. And the NFL clearly has an officiating problem. And, until it starts to affect them ratings wise, which I don't know if that day will ever come, I don't know if they'll address it, but this is a problem for people watching these games, knowing that the team that fought their way back arguably should have been set up for a game-winning field goal and had that taken away. And you feel for Cooks. And speaking of Cooks, Matt, let Tops be the cook for you. Head over to takeoutmeals.topsmarkets.com and elevate your food game with their great selection of custom cakes, desserts, pizzas, sandwich, fresh fruit, cheese trays, fried chicken, and so much more. Save time and easily shop from with the convenience of no fee pickup to all of our game day deals. No service fees, no tips, just the best deals in town.
That was pretty good, Ryan. Even on a Bills loss post-game playoff episode, you're bringing the heat with the transitions. This was a really interesting game from a how it played out perspective. We talked about the early part of it with James Cook putting the ball on the turf and really kind of changing the dynamic. I thought that for the most part, there were some really important plays made by several players of this defensive line over the course of the game. I mean, you bring up the Deion Walker interception at a key moment in the second half. I mean, For me, that's my vote for player or Amtrak hype train. Maybe not player of the game, but play of the game. That was an absolutely huge play at that moment for the rookie defensive tackle, Deion Walker. He ends up picking off Bo Nix. And then, of course, the Josh Allen interception comes a few plays later. But I wanted to bring up Amtrak and the hype train play of the game because right now, if you head to Amtrak.com, they can hook up anything that you need to do this January, February. If you're planning a trip, let Amtrak do it. For me, it's going to be Deion Walker. What do you got for you?
I'm going to go Khalil Shakir. Hauled in his first 6 receptions in the game, including one that he took for over 40 yards downfield, cutting through 2 defenders, making multiple defenders miss, setting up the Bills in a good spot there. And, to be quite honest, had Josh Allen delivered a better ball on a 3rd down pass to Shakir late in the game, the series before their game-tying field goal series, he may have gone to the end zone on that play. It was a low ball, bounced off the ground. He picked it up. He had the blocking around him, ran into the end zone there. And yeah, I think if you just Denver defenders thought that the play bounced, but I still think he would have scored had that ball been delivered better. He stepped up in a big time way after hauling in all 12 of his targets 1 week before. It's just unfortunate that his efforts in this game didn't end up leading the Bills to a win.
The one guy that I thought was a key contributor for this game that needed to step up was Joey Bosa. And honestly, I think the most noise he made in this game came in the post-game tunnel when he threw his helmet and that got caught on camera. It was, I thought Greg Rousseau was impactful in this game. He made a couple of big-time plays, affected Bo Nix. A.J. Epinesa had a couple of tip passes.
Yep.
I thought he was in the backfield as well. It wasn't the game for Ed to bring Ed Oliver back, Ryan. I don't think he was ready. He leaves after 16 snaps with a knee injury, so wasn't ready to go. I get the idea of wanting to bring him back, but he obviously wasn't ready. I think that they missed Fedarian Mathis. I think that the decision to make him active, you want to talk about costly moments in this game. Don't forget about that first drive when the Bills knock out the ball, they recover a fumble, and oh, by the way, Larry Ogunjobi was offside. Some of the moves, it's going to be an interesting press conference this week with Brandon Beane, because if you go back to the summer and some of, obviously all of the media noise around his interview on WGR and the wide receivers in this game, I think it was Matt Beauvais. We were talking about it in the media room right before I came out here to do the show. And he tweeted out this stat. I got a low battery on my phone, so I'm going to lose internet here in a second. But check out this stat from Beauvais. When targeting the Bills tight ends and running backs and Khalil Shakir, so he's adding him in there, which is important. Like, you got to add him in. But 20 for 25 for 247 yards and a touchdown. When targeting the other 4 wide receivers, it was 5 for 14 for 36 yards with a touchdown and 2 interceptions. The wide receivers are going to be a big talking point this offseason, and what the Bills have to do to remake this thing. I mean, we're going to have a podcast this week coming up about some of the changes that need to be made. I think there's going to be a lot of overhauling of this roster. And one of the other big takeaways coming out of this game and the emotions on Josh Allen's face, and he's wearing a lot of the blame. He's got to shoulder a lot of the blame in this game, rightfully so. But I think what Brandon Cook said in his locker room stuck with me the most, in that somebody needed to step up and make more plays for him, so he doesn't need to feel like he has to do everything. And I think that that's been the plight of this organization now for the past 2, 3, 4 seasons, is they've been moving in this direction of superhero Josh Allen, and he's able to put the cape on so much, so consistently. But in the end, it's almost like they've failed him in a way because they haven't put enough around him. Now, I don't want to downplay how important what they built at the on the offensive line and the tight ends. They've done a good job building a lot of parts of this team, but at the receiver position with an all-world quarterback like they have in Josh Allen, just hasn't been enough.
No, it's kind of malpractice this year, what he had to deal with at the wide receiver position. And his best chemistry ends up arguably outside of Shakir, obviously, being with Brandon Cooks, who you bring in midway late in the season, and they kind of develop a rapport. There was no chemistry with Palmer before he was put on the IR. Curtis Samuels missed too much time to have any kind of chemistry. Keon Coleman, oh my gosh, I know there was a holding penalty on the Bills on that play, but that drop in the back of the end zone, I mean, it looked like he had like stone blocks for hands on that play. He's not getting the help that he needs. You do need to tear down that wide receiver room. I'm bringing back Shakir. I'm considering signing Cooks to a 1-year deal. I still think he has some juice left. You got to go out and get a true number one receiver, though, somehow, some way. I don't care if that means trading draft capital, if that means moving up in this draft. If you think there's someone in there, they have to do it, because you're right. Allen feels like he has to do too much. And in a game like this, it led to a lot of costly turnovers. And arguably, again, we're going to get the officiating here, hopefully in a minute. Those turnovers cost Buffalo the game.
Got a super chat here on YouTube from Nana. League is rigged. Everyone's scared to say it, though. Players don't want to get fined. Josh Allen turned the ball over. However, he should have won. Listen, I'm not going to go as far to say things are rigged. I know that that's kind of like an easy place to go at times. And thank you for the super chat. What I would say is, like, in a game like this, it wasn't just the Brandon Cooks play. I mean, there was a Brandon Cooks touchdown where it looked like he was interfered with. That looked a lot similar to the Trey White play down when he was called for defensive pass interference. So it's called on the one end and then it's not called on the other end. Listen, we're in a time in sports with sports gambling running rampant over all of what we do in the sports space, that I think all of the people that are involved in like the determining outcomes of games need to be investigated and double checked and make sure that all those processes are in place to make sure that everything's on the up and up. Because there were some plays in this game, Ryan, that just, they don't hold up. And when you have the whole league and the national conversation after what should have been this awesome game between two great teams that should be celebrated, it was an all-time classic game, overtime game. That's what you want in the playoffs. But now we're left talking about some of the just unbelievable gaffes by the officiating crew in this game. And it's unfair to both fan bases, because if I'm a Broncos fan, I want to celebrate this thing, and I'm sure they are celebrating it. They're going on to although Bo Nix is out.
I don't think they're celebrating it.
What a crazy development that is, and it is what it is. But it just sucks when this is what such a big part of the conversation after these big time games, when it's just about the officiating, or a big part of it is about the officiating.
Yeah, that play in the back of the end zone to Cooks, he was clearly grabbed at. The defender wasn't turning his head on the play. Absolutely no flag is thrown. That could have set up a game-winning touchdown in regulation. And then you get to these ticky-tack penalties in overtime. Trey White had great coverage on his play. Taron Johnson's penalty was even more baffling to me after watching it back in slow motion. Both of those guys were in position. There was very minimal contact, and officiating took over. And that's why you have former players and current players commenting on social media. This is why people think the league is rigged. That was Prince Amukamara there, former cornerback of the Giants. And Draymond Jones, had that game been in Buffalo, that would have been a catch for Cooks and an interception, and so many other people speaking out about it. And now you just kind of look, and this is going to be the conversation coming out of this game. Not Denver, winning the game late, or Buffalo with the turnovers. It comes down to the officiating, because had that Cooks play been called a completion, the Bills probably kicked the field goal, win it in overtime. Had that pass interference been called on against Cooks' defender there in regulation, they might win it in regulation. There's so much that these officials end up costing teams the game, that it at least makes some fans curious about, what the league has to do to get this right.
Thank you so much for watching. Almost 3,000 people watching here. 9 p.m. Mountain Time here in Denver, 11 on the East Coast. We're going to have so much coverage over the course of the next week as we try to dissect, what the next moves are, Ryan, because I think that's probably where we should kind of close this thing down. I don't want to get too far down the road because I want to really start to think about what needs to be done. I'm actually going to hook up with Mike Giannetti from Spot Track this week to talk about some big, bold offseason predictions. We kind of had this in the works for a couple of weeks now. I've had one ruminating for a couple of weeks that I think, at first the sound of it might be shocking, but I think that, the Bills are going to have to make some shocking moves, I think, this offseason. I think If you run it back with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, which I think that they should. I think that you can make the argument that this is Sean McDermott's best coaching job. I think that, the wide receiver thing is, I'll be interested to hear from Brandon Beane this week and see how he responds to questions about that. But he's pivoted in the past, and he's made some really good changes when things haven't worked on the roster. And I think that there's going to be I think you can hold his feet to the fire. And I think some big moves are going to be necessary to kind of change the complexion of this roster a little bit. So you're not left in a situation where you're relying on mid-season acquisitions and players of playoff failures past to get you over the hump, which is obviously not working.
Massive moves have to be made, and partially because of the contracts that the Bills have in some of these cases with the cap hits and where they are. You're going to have to cut ties with some of these players as long as there's dead cap space that's at least digestible, or you have to rework some of these deals. You have to part ways with some of the old guard. And listen, some of the older players stepped up big time for this team. I'm not suggesting everyone has to go, but you're starting to see maybe Taron Johnson on the downside of his career. Clearly, it was not a good season for him. Despite that ticky-tack penalty at the end of the game, it hasn't been a great season in his case. And, you can go across the board on the offense side of the ball. There's a lot of dead weight with the contracts, with what they're earning. They're going to have some tough decisions on the offensive line in terms of free agents and the limited cap space. So this is going to be a very interesting offseason. We're going to have you covered with that. One thing I do want to say, Matt, though, is I'm going to say post game, and even in here a little bit, I've seen comments about firing Joe Brady. Joe Brady doesn't even make my top 10 of the problems with the Bills this game. They were moving the ball all game long against Denver. It was turnovers that cost them. It was miscues by Josh Allen, the low throw to Khalil Shakir, missing Dawson Knox on what could have been a touchdown at the end of regulation, throwing low to Mecole or to Hardman toward the end of that game. A higher pass is easily caught because he's wide open. He executed a great game plan, in my opinion. And I know there's some frustration about the running plays and overtime on first down. The run game was working well for the most part in this game. And then, Denver made some great adjustments to slow them down in overtime. So kudos to them for that. But Joe Brady does not get any heat from me after this game. This is one of his best play or called games, in my opinion, of the season.
I mean, he was handed a tough deal to start the second half. I mean, you have 4 straight scoring drives to end the first half by the Denver defense. And then you come out in the second half and Josh Allen gets blown up. They fumble and they get the ball right back. Now the defense then steps up and forces a field goal, but you got to reach deep into your bag to get this offense going. Nothing seemed to be working. Josh was turning the ball over. Josh was getting hit occasionally, although I think for the most part, the offensive line played pretty well outside of a couple of issues. But yeah, I think that Joe Brady, I didn't have a huge problem with Joe Brady today either. Thank you guys for having the guts to call out the league and refs. Bills played bad, but refs ultimately ended the Bills' hopes. That's a super chat from Uncle Luke's. Want to get to all the super chats that are here in the comments. How does he not take a play out of the Rams playbook and trade picks for proven players? Talking about Brandon Beane, that's Chris McCord. Seems to work well for them. Well, I think that that's definitely going to be something that might be in play this offseason, because you can make the argument, and this is fair. And if you want to be critical of Brandon Beane, and I think this is one area where you really can be, there's been some significant misses in the first round, in early rounds. I want to save some of this because I want to do a little bit. I want to prepare more. I want to get into a deep dive, because I do think when in the moments of passion right now, a playoff loss, and listen, Beane's been on that kind of the hotter seat all season. Fans have been a little bit frustrated with his attitude in the offseason. I get all that. But let's not forget some of the really good moves he's made and some of the good picks that he has made. Those kind of get pushed to the side when you want to focus in on some of the misses. But there have been misses. And oh, by the way, this year's first-round pick, another first-round pick, not on the field out here today, Maxwell Hairston, you end up having to throw Dane Jackson out there, who I advocated for maybe be able to make a good play. I was wrong on that. He didn't. Tough spot to be in. You have to run players back that you've been in this spot with them before.
Yeah, and specifically to this question from Chris, Brandon Beane actually addressed it a few years ago, and that he thought that maybe the and other GMs did too, that by going all in like that, you might have to have a tear down or a rebuild sooner rather than later. To the Rams' credit, it was not a very long, it wasn't even a tear down, but they maybe had like a letdown year or so. But they've been winning consistently since then. I know it hasn't necessarily carried over in the playoffs since that Super Bowl win, but they're still in contention this year at least. Could very easily be a team in the championship game, depending on how the outcome goes against the Bears, obviously, tomorrow. But they could easily make this Super Bowl with the way they've looked at times this season. So, there has to be something said about that formula may not be a bad idea because more times than not, it's just more important to win a trophy or win the whole thing at least once rather than just try to stay in this contender status and not get it done. But at the same time, it wasn't much of a teardown for the Rams.
Shout out to Josh Dolmas with the super chat, one of our insiders. We appreciate. Listen, we're gonna close it down here. I got to get out of here. I think that the sprinklers are about to turn on this side of the field a little after 9. I was told, so I don't want to get sprinkled on it. It's a little bit cold out here. It's a disappointing end to a tough season. I think injuries really caught up with the Bills down the stretch. Not an excuse. I feel like everybody's kind of dealing with it, and because of some really critical losses in the season, they ended up having to go on the road to try to go win 3 games. And listen, they could have won this game, gone on the road next week against Houston or New England and lost that game. So it's a tough situation. It's a horrible way to end another disappointing season. Josh Allen in the prime of his career, another season gone. But I got to tell you, Ryan, as much as these shows are tough on fans, and we both feel for everybody. I mean, we got both of our families are Phil. I mean,
Yeah.
my wife's texting me about the reactions of her and my son, and I'm sure my dad was probably hoping for a Super Bowl run here as he gets up in years. But it's sad. But I got to tell you, I couldn't be more grateful for the job that we have and the community that we get to share all of these moments with, because it makes going to work and doing all this really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So thankful for everyone that supports the podcast, our insiders in the text line, people we interact with daily on just social media. You guys make this one of the best jobs in the world. And, it is unfortunate that we're here having this conversation again, these heartbreaking losses, seemingly always last possession, regulation, or overtime. And like you said, we have family members that I want to see the Bills win it all for them at least once. As we're all getting older here in our lives. So being from Western New York, knowing how much it means to our families, hopefully that day comes. So, Bills fans, it's going to be a tough one to get over, but we're going to have you covered the next few weeks, months, you name it, as we start talking about free agency, the draft, you name it, tons to talk about here on Shout.
All right, from Empower Field at Mile High, that'll do it for the post-game episodes of Shout for this season. Everybody, I hope you have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next week.